Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and welcome to another Hump Day. Joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. I think I have a cute little romantic autumn joke for you.
Hit me.
Why was the robot couple's anniversary in the fall?
Because they were falling for each other.
Oh, that's so cute. It's because they were automated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that.
Cute, right?
How very demure and mindful.
That whole thing.
Yeah, we got introduced to that at my brother's wedding. A bunch of people were saying it. I'm like, what's happening? Why are we parroting these words?
I didn't understand it either, and now it just won't stop.
Someone showed us, like, oh.
Very mindful.
Very. So for new listeners, I will give you the rundown on what we do here on this channel. Voyse scours Reddit for stories that she finds interesting, funny, and dramatic, and we give our viewpoints on them. And we look forward to hearing yours, even if they do not align with ours.
Well, Timstradamus, it's Hydration Wednesday. Go ahead, raise up that canteen full of life sustenance, and remind everyone, stay hydrated out there.
Drink! Please, for your health.
It's for your health. And while you go ahead and stay hydrated, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for telling my husband I cheated on him even though I didn't? So, I, 26 female, have been married to my husband, 30 male, for 6 years. About 2 years into our marriage, I found out my husband had cheated on me with a high school friend that he met at one of his friend's weddings. I didn't go with him because it was a few days after the delivery of my first baby. He claimed it was just a one-time mistake, that he had a few drinks too many and that he regretted it. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. At that time, our daughter was only 1, and I didn't want to break up our family over something he swore was a mistake. I forgave him, or at least I thought I did. I convinced myself that it was something I could be okay with because I was afraid to start over, but honestly, I was too young and inexperienced to fully understand how deeply it hurt me. 3 years into the marriage, we had our second child, our son, who's now 3. Around that time, I found out my husband didn't just cheat once. He had cheated multiple times with different women during the early years of our marriage. I found out when my mother-in-law's birthday was coming up, and I wanted some pictures of her for a collage that I wanted to make for her. I was scrolling through my husband's photos when I found screenshots of women's profile from dating apps, so I went through his messages from years ago to find out that he had been cheating on me even before the girl from the wedding. The texts were usually vague, but enough to confirm my suspicions. I confronted him, and at first he tried to deny it, but I had the proof. The messages' dates exactly matched the periods he had reassured me that everything was good. He then gave up on the lie. When he finally confessed, he collapsed into sobs, gripping my hands, saying how much he hated himself for what he'd done, telling me how in those days he had been foolish, immature, and afraid of losing me. He begged me not to leave him. He promised that he had changed. He said it was not something he had done since we had our son, and that his family meant the world. Admittedly, his apology really got to me. I hesitated when I saw how broken he looked. I couldn't determine if it was sincere regret, desperation, or guilt. I told him I forgave him even though I never really did. The trust was broken, and the anger persisted despite my best efforts to move on. Since then, he has been acting like the perfect husband, as if to compensate for what he did. I'll admit, it felt good to be the center of his attention after so long, but for the last 2 years, I have been nothing but tolerating him, because when I look at him, all I see is lies. Now, getting to the title. Last weekend, after putting the kids to sleep, I decided to tell him that I cheated on him. I didn't, but I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain and betrayal I've been carrying all these years. When I told him, he was crushed. His face went pale, and he just kept saying, "No, you wouldn't. You couldn't." He begged me for details. When? Who? How could you do this to us? He couldn't believe that I had thrown away everything we'd been working to rebuild. He said he felt we were finally in a good place and this destroyed him. I told him, "I expect you to forgive me, just like I forgave you." Now he's completely heartbroken, barely speaking to me, acting like he's the victim here. He says what I did is worse because we were finally getting better, and now I've torn us apart. Part of me feels guilty, as if I manipulated him, but another part of me thinks he needed to experience even a piece of what I went through. So, am I the a-hole?
What the spicy meaty be? I guess we'll start with the very first incident, where she finds out that he cheats on her at a wedding that she wasn't attending because she had just given birth to their first child. That's hard. And I don't care who you are, forgiving anyone, especially for cheating, is a difficult task to do within a relationship, especially when you don't get help. Now, I'm not certain, did she go into some form of counseling? Or were they in couples counseling once this news had been...
They don't provide any of that information.
Okay. That's probably my first bit of advice is for a lot of couples that do go through cheating, if you're willing to try to work through it, you need to have outside perspective and help. Doing that on your own is seldom the right answer. For a lot of people, it's hard to compartmentalize and forgive without having the tools. So saying you forgive someone and actually forgiving someone are two very different things. And I think a lot of us have to come to that realization in our own time. But it sounds like she was able to navigate that without help, apparently, for at least 3 years, because she had forgiven him enough to have another child together, right? They kept going with their lives. Although she does say it at that moment when she had to choose between deconstructing the family completely when she found out, they just had the baby. You have so much of your life tied into marriage and family that it's sometimes, and I hate hearing this from people, but it is sometimes easier to, with the wrong perspective, to stay in that bad situation.
I think it's one of those points where it's easier, but it's not the right choice if you're talking about a good mental and actually having a relationship with someone that's healthy.
The thing you learn as you get into your adulthood is easy and right normally. Unfortunately, don't walk hand in hand the way you think that should. So a lot of us, and I can't blame people for being in that situation and going, you know what, let me work through this. And sometimes it can work and be healthy and you can climb out from that hole, but it takes a lot of work. Trust is very hard to rebuild. Not every couple can do it, but she trusted her husband. So we fast forward 3 years and she finds out after her second son is born that her husband has not only cheated again, but cheated multiple times during, I guess, that 3-year span from the first child to the second. After he told her that he only did it the one time after the wedding with a high school fling. How much longer have they stayed together after she found that out? Because there's years between where she's posting this now and when she learned about all the other cheating, right?
So if I'm calculating it correctly, because they've only been together for 6 years, after the first 2 years of marriage, she caught him cheating. And then on top of that, had the first child. And then their child is now 3. So that would put about a year between year 2 and year 4. That's when he was continuing to cheat. During year 4, that's when they have their son. And then apparently he's not cheating anymore. And then for the past 2 years, she's been holding on to this resentment after finding out the second time.
Okay, so we're saying 2 years between when she found out and now when she's saying what she said to him about her cheating.
Correct.
Okay.
For the second time.
It sounds like when she found out about all of the other infidelity, that she tried to do what she did the first time around, which was forgive in her way. At that point, you're kind of at a crossroads, right? Either you do what's best for you and that your mental health, and I believe to a better extent, even the family overall, because I can't imagine living in that type of household is good for anyone. Kids can feel the atmosphere that you create. And if you don't have trust and you have that resentment building into something toxic the way it did, I can't imagine that being healthy for anybody. So that crossroads is you leave the cheater because it can't be trusted. They've already proven that, regardless of them cleaning up their act the last 2 years. It does not absolve you of the last 4. or you get into counseling, right? You really want to try again to forgive and strengthen your relationship, you should have gotten yourself into counseling, you and your husband. But it sounds like you didn't, and it festered for 2 years. And I'm not saying what you said and did to him was wrong. I would not have gone about it like that, but you ended up putting yourself through, I can't imagine that type of mental taxation over the last 2 years about how much anger and hurt you felt. There's nothing worse than someone that you love hurting you. So you let it build up for 2 years and then you hit him with, by the way, I cheated on you too. While in reading it might sound fun and yeah, you got him, that did nothing for you. Outside of giving him a taste of his medicine, I like his response to all of it. How could you do this to us? You've hurt me. Of course. Did you not think that that's what you did to your wife for 4 years of your marriage? Your husband's clearly scum. I'm happy that he's tried to clean it up the last 2 years since his son was born, but that doesn't change what happened. And for your wife, ROP here, clearly it bothered her enough to have it build to say something gross like that to you.
To essentially plan this.
It was meant to make the biggest hole. And apparently it did. It's always funny to find out cheaters are hurt by cheaters. Even though it's the thing that you committed and you do, the one thing that hurts them the most is someone doing it to them. A wild concept, right?
Yes.
Everyone sucks. Not for the reasons I think that might jump, which would be me saying, oh, you should never have eye for an eyed it. I only think ROP sucks because she's stayed in the dark and not gotten the help she needed to move on with her life. Because I believe if she had truly gotten help from someone at the beginning, she probably could have avoided a lot of these problems with this particular husband. Never would have had a child too. You could have saved yourself a lot of hurt. So I will always stand on this side. Please don't think you can walk out of situations, especially when you're talking about something as severe as infidelity, on your own 2 feet. We need help. So I think everyone sucks. He definitely sucks because he's just a trash person. If you really cared about your family, you would have cared from day one when your wife was healing from giving birth while you were out at a wedding cheating on her.
So the consensus on Reddit was a combination of you're the a-hole and everyone sucks here. For Redditors, of course, OP's husband is an a-hole for cheating. However, OP is also the a-hole to themselves for letting this type of resentment grow. It was a consensus of get divorced because this relationship is done. Now for me, I feel that anyone who does something out of spite because of another is doing themselves a discourtesy. You give that person so much power to twist you into someone that the you before all of this would have never wanted to be. Bitterness, resentment, spite, those are all emotions that quietly twist who you were and are as a person into someone that's unrecognizable. The one thing that I can say is any decision you make in life, make sure that you can look in the mirror and tell yourself that you are happy and proud of who you are. The last thing that you ever want to do is look in the mirror and hate who you see. Now, there is very much a lot of accuracy in what you say, Timstradamus. Doing something the easy way and doing something the right way very, very seldom go hand in hand. I have to reiterate that because there is so much wisdom in that. In my experiences and through life, the outcomes that have made me mentally healthy, emotionally happy, and physically well has been the hardest choices that I have had to make. It has made and break relationships. It has taught me that I've had to put boundaries down and that I had to move on. But I can look at myself every day in the mirror and tell myself that I am happy with the person that I am and that I'm not lonely and sad because I've alienated people around me and you feel like you're in the middle of a crowd with people you should love and trust and you don't. All because it was easier just to stay. I'm not saying it's easy because, oh boy, is it not. But I am saying it is worth it. After you get through all of the pain, all of the grit, all of the difficulties, it is so worth it. But it's when you're ready. There were so many Redditors that just say, divorce him, leave. It's not worth it.
It's just two hurt people hurting each other.
Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about some privates. Am I the a-hole for asking my brother to stop joking about the fact that he's seen my wife's vagina? 39 male here. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, and we have 3 little girls, 8 female, 6 female, and 3 female. When our youngest was born, we couldn't make it to the hospital on time. My older brother, 41 male, was driving us and luckily is a doctor, although not the kind who delivers babies. However, he pulled over and delivered my daughter on the side of a highway. I will always be grateful to him for helping keep my wife calm and making sure both her and my daughter were safe. We actually named our youngest after him, Riley, because we were so appreciative that he was there to help. My brother has always had a bit of a crude sense of humor. After he helped my wife give birth, he started joking about the fact that he's one of the few men who's seen and touched his sister-in-law's vagina. Sometimes he adds that he's one of the few men who's seen his sister-in-law shit herself. This happened during the delivery. He brings up my wife's vagina anytime he's introducing her to someone new and at almost every family gathering. Once, he even said my wife has a pretty vagina. Everyone else thinks it's funny, but it makes both my wife and myself uncomfortable. It would be one thing if he made the joke once or twice, but this comes up almost every time we see him. I want to stress that this really is just his sense of humor, and I don't think he means it in a creepy way towards my wife, but it has the effect of making her uncomfortable. A few nights ago, we were at my parents' house for dinner. I was teasing my brother about something, and he said something along the lines of, "You're just jealous I've seen your wife's vagina." I told him the joke isn't funny and to knock it off because it's weird and makes me uncomfortable. The table got quiet and my brother looked pissed. Yesterday, I got a call from my brother's wife. She was furious. She said I was trying to humiliate my brother and hurt his reputation. I said I wasn't trying to do that, but I also am tired of hearing him make crude jokes about my wife. She said that having to see my wife's vagina made him uncomfortable at the time, but he did it because he wanted her and our daughter to be safe, and I was now weaponizing his generous act against him. She says I owe him an apology, but I don't feel I did anything wrong. Maybe I could have told him in private instead of raising it in front of the whole family that I didn't like the joke. But other than that, I think it's reasonable to ask him to stop making the same weird joke over and over again. Was I being too sensitive? And am I the a-hole?
Everybody sucks in this story. You, because you let a joke go on even though you knew your wife felt uncomfortable. But in your mind, you justified it because that's just my brother's sense of humor. The humor stopped when your wife probably, and I'm certain she told you this, felt uncomfortable. At that point, you should have taken your brother, not in front of the family at a dinner table, years ago. Because this has been going on for years in their lives.
At least 8 years.
At any point in time, you could have had a phone call or stepped aside and gone into a separate room with your brother and said, "Hey, enough. We don't feel comfortable with that." You could have put down a healthy boundary. It doesn't sound like your older brother knows what that looks like, especially if he's going to sit there and go, because his wife is defending them, saying he had to go through that. Okay. And I'm certain he did, and maybe it did make him feel uncomfortable, and this was his way of coping through seeing his sister-in-law's privates. Okay, fair enough, but he's a doctor. This is something that he probably sees on a daily basis, even though he does quantify that his brother isn't a delivery doctor. Regardless, it's the human anatomy. He knows what that is. So I highly doubt it has anything to do with his uncomfortableness, because if he did feel uncomfortable, you wouldn't be bringing it up at every scenario. Anytime he introduces your wife, he goes, "By the way, I've seen her privates." Ew.
And he doesn't say it like that. He says vagina.
I'm being nice. If that was my wife you were talking about, that joke would have gone one time and I would have had that conversation with you. That's inappropriate. I don't think anyone wants to hear someone talk about their significant other's privates when they're being introduced. That never should have even been a joke, in my opinion. Every family has their sense of humor. But it doesn't sound like that's a sense of humor. That sounds like a weird
fetish.
Maybe. We might be erring on that. If you're going to keep bringing it up at every situation that I saw your privates 6 years ago, come on.
8 years ago.
It's a little weird. And it's about time that it happened. And I'm shocked that no one else in the family was like, "Hey, bud," or your wife to sit there and go, "Why are you talking about another woman's privates all the time?" And then on top of that, the weirdest thing he said, she had a pretty one.
Ugh.
When would that be acceptable to hear come out of anyone else's mouth?
Never.
So, in my opinion, everyone sucks. You had a lot of time to tell your brother, knock it off. And for your brother not to read the room ever. Because this is the thing, when you make people uncomfortable, you can see that in their face. To have been doing it for 8 years and not read the room, not once. Everyone sucks except for your wife.
The consensus on Reddit was our OP's not the a-hole. For Redditors, if OP's brother wants to say a tasteless joke over and over in front of everyone, then he also needs to learn to actually take it when someone says stop. Now, I agree with you. Everyone sucks here. It shouldn't have gone on for 8 years, especially if you guys have been just dealing with it. That's not right. And I also agree that had he just dealt with it years ago when it first started and done it in private, this would not have happened. But I have to say this call out. OP, your brother's a coward. His wife had to come and defend him. And now she's here talking on his behalf and that things made him uncomfortable. Your brother, and I will say it again, is an absolute coward that he couldn't actually call you himself and have this conversation. And the fact that she would even demand an apology, no. The only person that should be apologized to in this whole situation is our OP's wife. And honestly, OP needs to turn around and truly apologize to his wife that he couldn't have had more of a spine to do this sooner.
Although OP's wife should have also had the spine too, though.
Also
if we want to get into
that.
those things, I even caught myself going, she clearly doesn't know how to set boundaries either.
I think it also depends on how the family is, because there are some people who, when you say something to their family members, they don't like it.
That's true. And if you live within that, if you're having a situation where you have people that are above reproach, where you have to speak to them through someone else in the family, you're in the wrong place. That's never healthy. Now, we love a good ribbing. Like, our family,
oh, yes.
we get after each other. It's fun, but it's not to where people feel uncomfortable. It's not a joke at someone else's expense.
But I think we're very lucky because the people that we do have those joking tendencies with, we've always been very open and said, look, if a joke goes too far, let me know. It is not meant to go that far.
And we always check each other. We have a big group message chat with our family. People say jokes all the time, and I've had people message go, hey, is that cool? And I do the same for them. Like, is it too soon? Or are we going too far? Because we love the jokes. It's hilarious, some of the stuff we say to each other. If I could share it here, I would, but we're not.
We can share one thing.
What?
You want to rock.
Whatever.
From Middle Earth, specifically.
My brother and his amazing wife are going on a honeymoon to New Zealand for about a month. And all I asked was that you get me a rock from Middle Earth. That's it. And now the teasing has commenced, but I don't mind it.
The exact joke I can't say, but in the end it's, but I want to rock.
That's all everyone's been saying to me for a couple days.
It's too good. And now we have our listeners that's also laying on this joke.
It's just a rock. It's from Middle Earth. How cool is that? But now apparently
it's
all
very
anyone
cool.
says to me is, I want to rock. Whatever.
Well, why don't we go ahead and end this one and go to our next story, which I think is a very unique case. Am I the a-hole for having a fake wedding, pretending to marry my wife? I'm using a throwaway account since I can't risk anyone I know catching on. 7 years ago, I met my now wife while completing my master's degree. She was a foreign student, and we were in the same flat for student accommodation, and we hit it off immediately. It wasn't long before we started dating, and then fast forward a year or two, and she decided to stay in the country and we move in together. I love this woman, and things were going great, but she eventually started to bring up the topic of marriage. Her family is very traditional, and she insisted that if we were to continue being together, then we have to get married. I was strongly against this, but I seriously cannot say no to this woman, and I eventually agreed. Now, here's where I may be the a-hole. I'm technically still married to my ex-wife. We did not end things on good terms, so I left without getting a divorce, changed my number and contact info. I did not want to have any contact with my ex-wife, and since my wife is foreign, she doesn't know the proper legal processes required to get married here. I told her that I would deal with the legal aspect while she organized the wedding. She did have some questions as to why she never had to sign anything or provide any form of ID, but I lied and said that it wasn't needed for where we live. We had a large wedding, and it would have been absolutely magical if it weren't for the fact that the whole time I was sweating bullets, wondering if anyone would find out it was all a ruse. The only people who had any idea it wasn't a proper wedding were the staff, where I said that we were already legally married and we were having a reception now that we had the money. We've been married for almost 3 years now, and she still has absolutely no idea. And it seemed like I had gotten away with the impossible. That was until last week, when my actual wife reached out to me. Apparently, she found out through a mutual friend that I had remarried and got my contact info from them. She is absolutely livid at me and says that I'm an a-hole for running away and then giving my wife a fake wedding and lying to her. Am I the a-hole?
"'Tis speak, my lord." What you're saying to your wife through bars, because I would be afraid to admit that to my new wife. Hey, by the way,
For the last 3 years, we actually haven't been married.
that. There's a lot of legal problems that could happen from just that. You said she's not from the country that you're in.
Correct.
Just that in and of itself, you could still be facing her going deportation or however your legal system works as far as her not being from the country.
She would see, why am I trying to upgrade my visa when I'm already married?
It's interesting. And she was very right to be a little suspicious that no paperwork needs to be signed.
But still, she hasn't questioned it aside from that, based on what we know now.
You just take care of the wedding day. I'll take care of all the legal stuff, baby.
We don't need an ID.
Yeah, when that legal stuff is that you have a whole ex-wife situation, and not an ex, a current wife situation as the paperwork, I understand moving on with life, and not everyone is meant to be together. There are people that you're going to bump into in life that are just there to help you move on in life. That's what this situation was. You should have been adult, though, and gotten the paperwork done. He says that there was a kerfuffle that happened, and he just left. Why couldn't you have just gotten the paperwork when you found out you were getting in a relationship with a new person? Let's say, for sake of argument, a year or two into that relationship with your now not wife, because she's still not your wife, you should have then at least reached out to your wife and gotten the divorce. It sounds like you are one of those type of people that avoid conflict at all costs, which can lead to situations like this, where your current wife is upset that you ran. It is what it is. But she's also rightly upset that you tricked your girlfriend, because that's what she still is a girlfriend, I guess a partner. You tricked your partner into believing that you guys are married. Not a good look for you. What is he asking if he's the a-hole for?
For having a fake wedding and pretending to marry his wife.
I mean, my guy, you don't even need to ask that. I think your story is quite unique, though. Oh, yeah, by the way, I'm still married, but let's get fake married.
How awkward.
He's sweating bullets throughout this entire thing to make sure no one calls him out. Wouldn't it have been just easier to talk to your
ex, get a divorce, and then marry?
You got some explainings to do. That's the problem. And I hope that your partner can forgive you and that you need to work through a lot of your avoidance, because that will permeate throughout your decision making within your relationship and in your life just in general. This one's a big one, and that kind of clarifies to me anyway how you're able to, or how you have been navigating life to this point. You shouldn't have done any of that. So you're a giant a-hole. I know when you posted this you were a giant a-hole, but this is almost movie worthy type scenario that you've given us.
Let me go ahead and provide a consensus. Our OP, of course, is the a-hole. For Redditors, a lie of this level was awful. Aside from, you have to worry about the other consequences that our OP is going to have to deal with when the truth really does come down, because that hammer is going to be big. Now, I find it funny because all of this reminded me of that scene from The Office where Michael says he declares bankruptcy and cuts his cards. Life doesn't work like that, folks. But the whole time I was reading this, I was like, this guy, what? Now, the post got taken down from Am I the A-hole? And they reposted the instance with an update. So let me go ahead and read that now. I'm not going to reread their reposted part, but just the update. And they said, the last couple days have been a whirlwind, and I'm making this update to say that you were all right. My ex told my wife about the false marriage, and my life has completely collapsed. My now ex-wife completely blew a gasket and was furious with me. She accused me of keeping her as a mistress so I could have 2 wives, which I tried to tell her wasn't true, but she wasn't having it. She stormed out of the house and is staying with a friend, and the closest thing to contact I've had with her is through this friend. She told our friends, my family, and even my job about what happened, and they are all taking her side and have shut me out completely. I got fired, and my dad called me up last night and told me that I am not welcome back home and not to contact my parents or my family. I genuinely don't know what to do now, as I will not be able to pay my rent, especially without my wife helping out financially. A lot of you mentioned the issue of immigration, which I thought would not be a problem as she had a work visa. As it turns out, she had a work visa, but it expired a long time ago. She thought that she would be fine since we were married, but after she learned it was a sham, she has been in a lot of hot water. Apparently, after she contacted the Home Office, they said that if she did not get voluntarily deported, she would be detained and will get a minimum of 2 or even 5-year ban from entering the country regardless. I am not entirely sure how her family took the news, but according to the friend she is staying with, they are not happy with her and might not take her back either. So yeah, a lot has happened. I feel like complete shit and know that this could have all been avoided, and now I have completely blown up both of our lives.
The lessons we learn. Oh, man.
Actions have consequences. I must say, there were a lot of Redditors that said, OP's girlfriend, ex-wife, something, this poor woman needs to get an immigration lawyer. She needs to get it yesterday, because all of this started happening because of essentially marriage fraud.
Yes.
And man, I can't even imagine how twisted someone's life would be to have something like this happen.
What's also interesting is, depending on what country they're in, I'm not sure how the health insurance works, but obviously you guys got lucky that none of you got sick or in any type of health problem for 3 years, because a part of the whole thing with getting married is you get on each other's insurance. Like that's, I don't know. There was a lot there, and conflict avoiding got you in the problem that you are in today. I can see, and I don't hope for the type of lesson that this person just learned, because it sounds like it came with a very heavy and severe cost. Like his entire life is upended. He lost his job. He can't pay the rent, and his partner now is done, and she might actually be getting voluntarily deported soon. And, there's just so many things that came from this cascade that, maybe if you had handled it correctly and told your partner first, instead of having your current wife, your wife, the legally one that you're married to, reach out to her, I think this could have gone down, although it still would have been a lot of anger and hurt, it would have gone down a little less chaotic had you been honest about it from the beginning. Look, hey, I made a terrible mistake. I am not married to you, but I still want to be. I'm trying to work through getting legally the divorce so that we can legally be married. Maybe that, instead of having your current wife come to your partner and tell her all of these things, you should have taken onus for the decisions you made, and it wouldn't have ended up being in this
fantastically chaotic drama sitcom.
It's a ruin now. I'm sorry it just had to come at such a high cost for everyone involved. Hopefully you can put your life back together, OP. There will be better days. Just know going forward that you need to work on being truthful and honest. That'll go a lot further.
I agree. Well, let's go on to our last story. And this one's a Boomer story. Boomer closes her account, but thinks I will still help her because of our friendship. I was the account manager of a Boomer who had a legacy account with my firm. It was a smaller account, and it billed lower than any of my other accounts because the contract for services was only offered years ago. It wouldn't have even been on my radar, except the account holder was very difficult to work with. She called every quarter, after she received her financial statement, and we went line by line through every transaction. These calls could last hours and were usually around an hour per instance. On almost every call, she complained about her fees, told me that they were too high, and that she would figure out exactly how we were cheating or stealing from her someday. I explained that she couldn't even get this kind of fee structure now, to which she always replied that she had a mind to take her business elsewhere. Long story short, one day she demands that we close her account immediately and transfer the assets to another financial institution. I was overjoyed until she called me a little over half a year later to tell me that her new account manager wouldn't return any more of her calls, that she thought paying a higher fee for her new account meant better service, that no one would help her with her latest financial statement, and would I mind going through it with her if she mailed me a copy because of our many years of friendship? I politely declined, but I still dream about what I really wanted to say to her.
Kudos to you, OP, for still being classy, because you are correct. You really did have the opening to waylay, but honestly, punching down, I'm not sure how much older. They say boomer, but
that's such a generalized.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be anything. I think, and this is probably more truly a me story than anything else, because I work in finance. I have dealt with those challenging individuals with such big personalities that want to go through all the lines and question every little thing. I make sure to have my I's dotted and my T's crossed, because for me, I hold my professionalism very high up there. But when you have someone and that they have this way of saying, I'm going to find out how you're cheating or stealing from me, I'm going to go somewhere else because since I'm going to pay more, that means I'm going to get a better service. And every part of me is just like, please just go. Just do it. Walk out that door. I will still be polite, but man, I just don't want to deal with you every day anymore.
Treat people with kindness and respect, and normally it's given to you. Not every situation, but had she been one of those people that have always been courteous and kind, maybe when you get asked that by someone you've worked with for many years, maybe that answer is a little different or handled with a little more care, but because you gave none of it, you deserve none of it.
I also agree.
Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
Not too much a touch up on that. You get back what you put in is basically the sum of that story.
Yeah, essentially.
Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you've seen the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays and Wednesdays. And we have Damas After Dark on our Patreon, if you're a little bit curious.
Be curious.
Take a peek.
Or not.
Or yeah, it's up to you. We would also love to thank all of our Patreons for your continued support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of y'all.
Mwah!
And as always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
I think I picked some pretty interesting ones. A cheater that never cheated, a crude joker that finally got called out, and a fake marriage. Wow, today was full of it.
Yeah, I don't understand why you would walk around telling everyone you saw your sister-in-law's privates as like a fun joke or a...
That still screams that he's got some like secret kink there.
There might be. He might like her a little more than he's willing to put off. And I'm not like interjecting that into the story. I'm just saying...
It's just a feeling. We can all have those feelings.
What do the kids say? That's a weird flex. Why? And then the having a wife and getting married fakely and the messes we make in life. And remember, if you post it, maybe I should tell Voyse our marriage is fake too.
Oh, heaven help all of us.
I don't even know how I would broach that after this many years. Hey, baby.
This better be good.
Hello, babe.